Bill Louden was iconic in the agricultural mechanization industry. He really was, and his name is mentioned with McCormick and Deering and John Deere and all those people. All of them came to the party with some fundamental idea how to make it easier for farmers. He came up with an invention that would basically pick hay off of a wagon, take it up, put it in a hay mow, and drop it so that men didn't physically have to do that with a fork. And he was revered as one of the guys that probably reduced the most foot-pounds of work for a farmer, any of them. He had a lot of problems as a child with childhood diseases, and he almost died from rheumatoid arthritis as a youngster. So once he got to where he was physically able to get a shop going, he started building these trolleys with his own hands. He started going out and installing them in the barns himself. And that was really part of his success as a business guy, is he was hands-on. He knew what was going on. He wasn't a big city guy or a factory guy or an engineer guy or anything. He was all those rolled into one person, but at the core of it, he was trying to figure out ways of making it easier for a farmer.
Whether it was Loudon's hay trolleys, litter carriers, or other labor-saving inventions, the farmer who bought something from Bill Louden usually had his investment paid off within weeks.
This is affectionately referred to as Old Louden number 1. No one's ever seen one in the flesh, so a number of us had to engineer it. But the one thing about Old Louden number 1, it had a little trip. You put a knot on it and it released it on the rail. It went up in the barn. This runs on a 2x8 up on end. And the challenge with it is you could only go as far into the barn as you could run a 2x8, which is like 10 or 20 feet. That was it. His big advancement was when he moved from these first two models, which probably went in the barn 15 foot if you were lucky, to this model, which was the first one with what we call a split chassis. He split it so there's a space down the middle, and you could put track hangers on this and run it into a barn 40 feet, 50 feet, 60 feet. It was the first one he made that would go all the way back in the barn.
The nationwide financial panic of 1873 was hard on William Louden. Many of Fairfield's industrial entrepreneurs ended up going bankrupt.
This is a little rope break he was so proud of, and he spent 7 years after the Depression of '73 developing this. So this trolley is acting like it's up in the hay mow. The hay forks have been tripped, it's dropped its load, and it's on its way to the front of the barn and engage it in this knocker right here. It allows this pulley to drop back down to the ground with a hay fork and pick up another load of hay.
Despite his dogged determination and brilliant designs, William Louden's business faltered as he continued to fight the effects of a decade-long financial downturn.
He tried to manufacture it and was successful, but went broke a couple of times and decided to contact my grandfather, R.B., who was in Kansas at the time practicing law, to come back and take over the business side of the Louden Machinery Company, which my grandfather did in 1888. And they formed a good team. William was the brains behind the product, and my grandfather was the brains behind the business.
Well, RB came in and he took a lot of the load of those kind of problems off of his back and let Louden sort of be the front man for the company, but also stay focused on what he liked to do, which was invent, spend time with farmers, figure out ways of building a better mousetrap. So, the two brothers together made a real go of it, but I think that kept him on track and not let the business drag him off of his main mission.
It may have been that without my grandfather's participation from the financial standpoint, that we may never have heard as much of William Louden as we do now.
About the turn of the century, many of his competitors, and they were significant at the time, decided that they were going to go the Walmart of the day. They were going to sell through the mail order houses in Chicago. Louden's marketing approach of the Louden enterprise was to sell directly through hardware stores. He had 118 patents. That meant that his name went on just about all of his product that he sold, and it was prominently displayed, but all mainly focused on farming activities and reducing labor on the farmer. He figured out that maybe the best way to attract customers was to offer a barn design so that they had many options. So he basically had cookie cutter barns, and he probably had 20 or 30 of them. Cleverly, they all included plenty of Louden equipment. You know, you got to have Louden barn door rollers, Louden ventilators, Louden stanchions for the cows, Louden watering cups for the cows to drink out of, a Louden hay trolley. So when he got in the design business, it was really for two reasons. One, to help farmers zero in on what kind of a barn they needed, and obviously number two, to fill it with Louden equipment. When the hay trolley and then later the whole barn hardware market matured, as all markets mature, they had moved off into this overhead crane business. And somebody walked up from the government and tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Say, we sure could use one of your overhead systems to help us in the war effort." So Louden decided, once he got his mind around it, okay, we're going to go into overhead rail systems. So he got in through World War I into this overhead crane thing, and it kept the company going for another 30 years.
The Louden Machinery Company was integral in developing and working with the delivery system of the atom bomb, which was very hush-hush. I think only 2 or 3 from the company were involved and were sworn to secrecy, and nobody knew about it till after the war and dropping of the bomb, and then the story came out.
There are many connections of Louden to the town of Fairfield specifically. Manufacturing went on there, distribution went on there, and they did have warehouse service centers, 4 or 5 in the United States, one out east, one up in Minnesota, and so forth and so on. Louden's origins, you know, from childhood through successful businessman, was always Fairfield. The thing he'll be remembered for most is the legacy he left in agriculture and industry as well.